First of all, welcome to Sarajevo.
Thank you.
Bosnia and Herzegovina was struck by a terrible natural disaster. Floods have devastated a number of cities in our country. A special team trained to respond in case of flood from the United Kingdom was among the first who arrived to our country. How can the government of your country give us some more help to overcome the crisis we are in right now? International Donors Conference has already been announced.
Well, obviously the first thing I'd want to say is to express the sympathy of both the government and the people of the United Kingdom for this appalling natural disaster that's killed people in Bosnia-Herzegovina and has deprived many more of their homes and of their livelihoods, and we must do whatever we can to help. Obviously, we've been trying to help in the short term through help from experts. We've been able to deploy some of our soldiers who are supporting the EUFOR force to support the Bosnian troops who are involved in the effort to rescue people. We've also been giving some financial assistance to charities who've been supporting homeless people in Bosnia-Herzegovina. But beyond that, I think we are very keen to work within the EU context, the United Nations context, to try to find ways in which to contribute to the bigger, longer-term work of national reconstruction that is now going to be necessary. Talking to ministers from Bosnia and Herzegovina and ministers from both the entities, it's very clear to me that this is a disaster on a quite unprecedented scale. It will need a huge amount of energy and commitment from within the country, but your friends internationally want to help as well.
A forum for prosperity and jobs was held in Sarajevo last week. It was designed at the first step in so-called new EU approach to Bosnia and Herzegovina. This forum was somehow in the shadow of those floods and the catastrophe that happened to our country. Anyway, is it, in your opinion, of course, a true indicator to change the policy or of change in policy of the official Brussels towards Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in which way this new European Union approach towards Bosnia and Herzegovina is reflected?
I think it's an illustration of how the EU approach to Bosnia-Herzegovina is being broadened out. And I think actually that the appalling disaster of the floods reinforces the need for urgent and far-reaching economic reform. It was necessary, I believe, anyway. If you look at the analysis from the European Union, Bosnia, sadly, has been falling down the international lists in terms of a country where it is easy to do business. And businesses are finding that the tax system, the regulatory system is too complicated. It deters investment. And so actually getting economic growth, getting structured economic reform in place is a part of responding to the tragedy of the floods, as well as to addressing the human tragedy of 59% youth unemployment in Bosnia-Herzegovina, the biggest total of youth unemployment in Europe. And that is a tragedy for every young man and woman who wants to find a job and cannot get one. And of course, it is also a potential source of future social and political tension if there are so many ambitious young people who are frustrated because they cannot find work. So I think it's in all our interests, Bosnia's friends and people of all political parties and all entity backgrounds within Bosnia-Herzegovina, to work together to take forward a successful program of economic reform.
Do you think that this approach came too late for our country? Could and should it happen earlier?
One can always say with any measure of reform, it ought to have been taken earlier. I think that the important point is that it is taken forward now with energy and determination and commitment. And I think one of the inspiring stories to come out of the tragedy of the flooding has been the way in which people from all traditions within Bosnia-Herzegovina came together to help one another, and they didn't bother too much about which entity or which canton people were from. They were seeing fellow citizens who were in need of help, and people came and gave that help freely. That's the spirit I think we want to take through into economic reform as well, because job creation, getting more businesses, letting existing businesses grow is surely in everyone's interest.
We've already mentioned the European Union. Another important issue for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and perhaps even more important, is the entry into NATO. In which way can the United Kingdom offer its support regarding this issue?
Well, we very much want to see Bosnia and Herzegovina make progress towards NATO membership. We've long supported that ambition. At the moment, as you know, that is held up by the deadlock over the question of defence property, because under the previous agreements, that has to be properly registered with the state. So we think that it's important that the political parties within Bosnia and Herzegovina at the different levels do make that commitment to overcome that remaining obstacle so that the NATO progress can continue.
The United Kingdom will host a global summit to end sexual violence in conflict. The summit will be held in London this month. Sexual violence happened largely during the aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina, as evidenced and proved in a number of documents and judgments. In which way this phenomenon can be stopped, and what are the objectives of the conference?
Well, William Hague, our Foreign Secretary, was really inspired to launch this initiative that's led to the conference by hearing direct from victims in Bosnia-Herzegovina about their traumatic experiences. And the experience of Bosnia-Herzegovina is very, very important here, because while it is true that the use of sexual violence in this country has had quite a lot of international publicity, the more that we talk to people in different parts of the world that have experienced conflict and warfare, the more we're finding that this has been a problem, has been an obscenity, frankly, in so many different conflicts in many different countries. And the fact that Bosnia-Herzegovina has been more open than many countries about this experience and what it's meant for so many people, I think is something of an example for others. So I'm glad that Foreign Minister Lagumdzija is coming to London. He will be making a presentation about both the successes, but also of Bosnia and Herzegovina coming to terms with that tragic legacy, but also explaining the difficulties and the challenges that have been involved. Because for individual people as well as for a country, it is a very difficult experience to have to face up to and confront in one's past.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the interview for TV1.
Thank you very much indeed.